Welcome back to me, my McLane. Been a while since I've done a few videos, so I thought I would throw one together real quick right here. I had mentioned back in a few earlier episodes in the winter that I was going to be doing some projects on the yard, and I've been really busy. I've done 3 yard renovations. I've done some sprinklers for one of those yard renos. I've done a couple of projects in my yard, and I have a couple of ongoing projects that I'm doing in my yard. So, I'm really busy. I've been keeping busy trying to get these things done, and it just seems like the weekends are just way too short to do all this work. So I never quite get done as much as I want to. I did get my backyard reseeded this weekend, and I got a quick additional sprinkler line put in. That's one of the things that I've been wanting to get done after doing some yard renos on some other people's houses. And, it's going to look great, I hope. I have a couple of surprises going on out there that I want to show everybody. So as soon as that starts coming in, we'll talk about that and show you kind of what I got going on in the backyard. This is not going to be a garage video. Just kind of doing a little opening here, just to kind of talk about some of the things that I've been doing, where I've been. I'm constantly mowing. I've done some fertilizer applications. I'm using urea nitrogen, and it's really making my lawn take off, especially my putting green. So I'm spending time after work. If I get home early enough, I will get out there and mow. Thank God the sun is out much later now, because I sometimes don't get home from work till 7 o'clock at night, and I really don't like coming home and mowing the lawn, but I got to get it done to keep up with it. So we're going to talk about a few things today. We're going to talk about some Poa annua, and we're going to just talk about some common things that you could do in your yard. Aside from all these special mixes people are trying to sell you on the internet and their channels, we're going to talk about why, these products are way overkill, and you're spending way too much money, especially if you're a new homeowner and you're starting, lawn care for the first time. I'm going to give you a couple things here that are going to be easy. So Poa annua, this is my yard back in 2024. It was early. It was like March. And, it had just got attacked by Poa. I hadn't really been, doing anything to take care of it. And I had reseeded the year before, and I just didn't do anything for it. So Poa just kind of came in, and that's all I saw. These light green patches are, Poa. So I'm out roasting some coffee about a month ago in my backyard, just kind of kicking around, checking out the lawn, seeing how it's looking after the winter. And I just started seeing all this Poa. And I don't really do anything in my backyard to take care of it, so I got my weed puller out, and I started pulling these plugs. I've gotten a few questions about Poa, and that's kind of why I added it into the video here, because Poa is starting to pop out really bad right now, and in cool season lawns it's really hard to take care of Poa annua. So I'm going to link that video for Poa at the end of this video so that you could check that out and get a little information on what things that can help you with the Poa annua in your yard. I basically am just pulling it in my backyard, trying to take care of it. Since I'm seeding, I'm not doing any kind of pre-emergence or anything like that. I could put some ethofumicate on it and try to spray it, but like I said, this is a month ago, and I knew I was going to start doing some seeding because I got some areas of my yard that I'm extending the grass in, and I got some areas that didn't really take from last year because I had this really huge tree that was creating a lot of shade in my backyard, so my seed was having a hard time germinating. So I've since cut that tree back and made it so I get a lot more sunlight back there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, get that reseeded. I actually completed that. So I pulled all these Poa annua pieces out, and I filled the holes with a little fill dirt. it's amazing how quick this POA comes in. Since that month, I found a couple more little pieces pop up, and I've just kind of been monitoring it and hand pulling it. That's the best way. If you can keep on top of this, just check your yard. Oh, look at that nice worm there, little POA annua. Keep your yard POA free just by kind of keeping an eye on what's going on out there. And when you see it, pull it. Anyways, watch that video. I'll link it at the end here. So March 30th, I got this new backpack sprayer. And this is one of the first, things I wanted to talk about. All these people talking about their secret sauces, their mollycoddles, their special juice, all these things that they add to their sprayers to make their lawns, look great. This video here, the before and after, is literally done while I'm still spraying. And you can see the after effects. There's no camera adjusting. There's no, adjusting the color in my video editing here. That's straight up basically happened from the time I sprayed it to the time I finished spraying it. The before and after there. It's just nitrogen and heptahydrated iron that I use. And the heptahydrated iron is basically got some sulfur and some manganese or magnesium. And, this is some urea nitrogen I'm putting down right here. I've since learned that putting it down in granular form on my yard is not a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and mix and spray that. Kind of go against, what I've always talked about, with your macronutrients, applying it in a granular form is the best method to get your turf grass to uptake that properly. Your micronutrients, it's best to spray those in liquid form, so it's nice to have a backpack sprayer to spray those things. And I also like it for the control that you get when you're spraying for fungus and weeds and that sort of thing. You just get a lot more control in spreading that. So here, I just kind of showing the past few mows here after I did those applications, the greening of the grass, how thick and fast it was growing. Mowing is essential. The more you mow, the thicker and more full your lawn's going to look. You can mow your lawn at whatever height you like. I prefer short grass. It's a little bit more to take care of it. I have to water a little bit more. But, my putting green here is 2 millimeters. And my main lawn, my Kentucky bluegrass, is cut at 1/4 of an inch. And, I do this because, I just have always wanted that kind of golf course look, that really short cut. It looks really nice. It's like a nice, low cut carpet. And, I take care of it that way. I don't use any special, things. And I don't use humic. I don't use potassium. I don't use phosphorus. I don't use sea kelp. I don't use any of that stuff. I don't waste my money on that. I address things in my lawn. When my lawn needs something, I take care of it and I add it. A lot of these things that you add, like potassium, are going to just invite disease, especially if you over apply these things. Some of these guys in these YouTube channels, they're adding potassium and then they have some sort of fungus come up and a disease and they have no reason, they don't know why. And it's just a simple thing that, studied research papers, will, back this up. Potassium is a cause for disease and can lead to disease in your yard if you overuse it. Phosphorus is, bad for the environment. Using too much phosphorus, just not a good idea. Most states, have bans on using phosphorus in your lawn. There's only certain reasons you're allowed to use phosphorus. And, you got YouTube guys out there telling you to apply phosphorus and potassium all the time, and they never give you that disclaimer, using this, could be, against the law in your state. Here in Washington, yeah, you're not supposed to use phosphorus. So here I'm going to do a real-time, blade cut, height adjustment. Every time I finish mowing my yard, I blow the grass off, to try to help prevent the spread of the bent grass into my Kentucky bluegrass. I know the grass blades don't really,
I'm just
cause the bent grass
mow
to start growing in the bluegrass, but
adjustment.
I do it just as a cleanliness measure,
mowing
you know,
both.
so I don't really carry anything off from
Two
my
heights.
putting green if I had something going on over there into my Kentucky
Right
bluegrass.
now.
And so here I'm just going to loosen the tie rod across the front here. That's pretty much the main thing that holds the support brackets for the adjustment. I'm loosening the stop nuts for the adjustment knobs, and those are just to, you know, kind of help keep that bracket, you know, in place while you're mowing. And then there's 4 bolts, 2 on each side, to loosen for your actual adjustment bracket so that it will slide up and down as you're adjusting these knobs. You know, and you know, this McLane's greenskeeper is micro adjustable. You can actually adjust it from any height you want. You know, if you have the standard, you know, greenskeeper with their McLane roller on it, it's supposed to be adjustable from 3 millimeters to 3/4 of an inch. I have a custom roller on mine, and I can, you know, lower mine down to practically dirt level. Not that I'd want to. You see here, I kind of fight with some of these knobs every now and then. You know, with, you know, the cleanliness, you know, watering down my mower and spraying it and cleaning it and all that stuff, and just kind of getting grass in there. You know, these brackets tend to, you know, not slide as easily as they need to. I got my paint stick. It's 1/4 of an inch thick, and I'm using that to determine the bed knife to ground level, to adjust it to 1/4 of an inch. That's what I cut my Kentucky bluegrass at. So once I've got it all dialed in, I tighten everything back up and go back to town. You know, this process takes a couple of minutes. You know, it's not too long. It is, you know, a little bit more cumbersome. And then, of course, your rotary mower, where you just basically take the knobs there on the tires and you just kind of click them up, click them down, use that little lever to do that. You know, watering is important. I water at 4 in the morning. It's, you know, generally the best time is early morning to get your water down.
Here, they don't
let it soak into your ground before the sun comes up and starts beating down on it. And it gives that water a chance to kind of, you know, soak into the dirt a little bit more, and gives your roots something to, you know, grow down into. You know, here I'm mowing my Kentucky bluegrass 1/4 of an inch. You know, I wanted to point out that, you know, when I mow my lawns, I do it when I can, whether the sun's out or not, whether it's early morning, mid-afternoon, late in the evening like this right here. I mean, it's overcast, you know, and, you know, you get different, you know, contrasts on the greenness of the lawn. I mean, my Kentucky bluegrass, I mean, it is green. It is really deep green. And, you know, sometimes when the sun's out and it's beating down on it, you know, you'll see here at the end of the video, you know, it doesn't look too terribly green, but, you know, it is. You know, there's lots of channels out there that talk about, you know, easy ways to maintain your yard and keep them green, you know, using minimal products. You know, as a new homeowner, you shouldn't have to be learning all this, you know, different stuff on things you can do. You know, if your lawn doesn't need it, it doesn't need it. You know, but if your lawn's showing signs of it's having some troubles, maybe with some nutrients or some fungus or disease, you know, you need to treat it. You need to take care of it. But if it's not showing any signs of any problems, you really don't need to do anything to it. It's going to be fine. If you mow your lawn at the proper height and, you know, a couple of inches, it's going to be fine. You know, turf grass is one of the easiest things to grow. You don't have to add all these special products and buy all these special products and spend all that extra money to make your grass look, you know, great. And here's my putting green, just kind of showing the speed of the putt and how smooth it is. You know, like I said, it's cut at 2 millimeters. It's, you know, pretty much golf course height, and it's very smooth. But I do need to verticut it, and I do need to sand it. It's got some tire marks, you know, tire tracks kind of going through it a little bit. I mean, not bad, but they're there because, you know, I mow in the wintertime when it's really wet. And here's a little overview of my yard. Got my Kentucky bluegrass and then my bent grass putting green. And I've got my newly seeded outer edges there. Here's a little shot of how smooth the cut is on the Kentucky bluegrass. It's looking pretty good. You know, I'm going to produce some more videos for you of some of these projects I've got going on. You know, other than that, you know, just make it easy in your lawn. It's not complicated. Simple products are going to return great results. You know, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.